These are fun, off-the-cuff discussions on movies and streaming series, both new and old.
Together, we'll attempt to bridge the gap between Hollywood industry insider and the casual viewer.
This is Alec.
And I'm Ben.
And you're listening to the Cinema A to B podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Cinema A to B. Today we're going to be talking about the 1987 action sci-fi film Predator from the fantastic director John McTiernan. Ben, let's talk about this.
So yeah, as we mentioned right before we hit record, this is oddly enough, I don't understand how this is happening, but this is the third John McTiernan film that we've elected to discuss on the podcast. And it's happenstance, but it's a welcome one.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I love this era of John McTiernan. Mm-hmm. And as much as I love Die Hard, and Die Hard is my favorite action film, there's just something about Predator.
Yeah.
And Predator is my favorite. I'm not going to say it's the best, but Predator is my favorite Schwarzenegger film. Mm. And this is, if I'm not mistaken, this is the first Schwarzenegger film on the podcast.
Yeah.
But it won't be the last. And I think I'll tease, we'll probably have plans in the near future on maybe a season of Schwarzenegger, but yes. It won't include this one. This is a tremendous piece of filmmaking from the late 80s. And my favorite aspect of Predator is that I get two movies for the price of one.
Exactly. I was going to say that.
Yeah. Yeah. Why don't you elaborate on that?
Well, I mean, obviously when the first time I watched it, it was about Predator, and the first whole thing is about these like Colombian drug people that they're going in, and then there's this whole like CIA like operative stuff of like, oh, they're gonna go in and get some ambassador or whoever, but then it turns out it's not, and they've already sent in another SEAL team, and like there's this whole kind of conspiracy that never gets solved. Like we never find out, like it just kind of disappears, and then we fight the Predator, and then it's like, all right, let's go home, and I'm like, but no, what's going on? Like, we still have to figure this out, but never will. It's never will.
And it's likely that it was all BS from the very beginning, and that it was all designed to get them in there to figure out what had been effectively hunting. Mm-hmm. It was actually Green Berets.
Oh, that
was what was so cool when I was a kid. I didn't see this when it immediately came out, but I saw it very young. A super memorable either 9th or 10th birthday party. My father finally kind of relented, and I'm sure my mother was not happy about it, but I had one really close friend over for like my 9th or 10th birthday. I can't really remember the year in there. And I got a bunch of G.I. Joe stuff, and then my dad had rented Predator.
Oh,
and we sat down I was laid on the floor playing G.I. Joes and watching this movie. And little did I know that it would become like this just beloved piece of sci-fi action for me. This is unlike anything else. You're right. You get the whole special ops, jungle warfare movie in the first half, and then you get this super stripped down man versus nature, but it's unnatural nature with Schwarzenegger. And I think that's the aspect of it that I love the most, is that I get this super quick switch that gets flipped into basically the second movie.
Yeah.
And Arnold's more than up to the task of carrying the weight of this film and being basically the only guy on screen for, I don't think it's the back hour, but it's close.
It's like 30 minutes, like at least 35 minutes of time that he is just like, it's just kind of him and Predator, and mostly just him because he's still Predator's and his invisibility, cloaking device or whatever he's got going on. But this is, to my opinion, this is peak Arnold. Like, he's fantastic in Total Recall. He's fantastic in Terminator. But this is where we get a lot of great quotes that are still said today. A lot of great memes and GIFs that are used still today. Like this, not that it goes, he goes off the rails. I mean, he still is going to do Terminator 2, but this is peak Arnold before he shaves his cheekbones. This is high cheekbone Arnold. This is the last movie that he did before he just kind of had him a little bit reduced so he could be a little bit nicer looking.
Was that ever confirmed? Was that ever been confirmed?
Dude, come on. No, it's never been confirmed. But look, take a look at Predator. Take a look at Terminator 2.
No, I know.
There's a huge difference in this.
My father is a huge fan of Arnold, and that's why I'm such a big fan of Arnold as well. And you're right. No, there's high cheekbone Arnold, and then there's not.
Yeah.
The crazy thing about this movie is how much weight he lost. He did
it specifically so that way he could look a little bit more lean and fit, like not a SEAL team, but whatever.
Green Beret. They're basically, I don't know what they are. They're basically Delta Force is probably the closest. But I always got a kick out of it because my dad was 82nd Airborne, stationed at Bragg, and then when they find the guy's skinned alive, he's like, these are Green Berets from Fort Bragg, and it was always like, oh, that's cool. They actually they actually got it right where special forces are posted, and it's no longer Bragg.
No.
But for the purposes of this podcast, I'm going to continue to call it that. But there was a little bit of a connection there, and I was always playing Army at that age. And so this film fit right in line with that. And I can't think of a more testosterone-filled film than Predator.
No, absolutely not.
Because you go through this cast, and it's like Arnold isn't even the biggest guy on the block. I mean, that belongs to Jesse Ventura. And you see Jesse Ventura up next to him, and it's like, yeah. Now, I think Arnold had bigger arms. I think that was the joke, right? Like they were constantly.
Well, so when he was getting fitted, Jesse Ventura was told by wardrobe that his arms were 1 inch bigger than Arnold's. And so when they got to set, he challenged Arnold to like, hey, let's see how big our arms are. And so they measured it, and Arnold's were bigger. And supposedly the rumor is, the trivia bit is that Arnold had paid the wardrobe staff to tell Jesse Ventura this, because Arnold got like the bet was like some really nice champagne bottle or something. So it was, the whole set, going into the fun parts of this movie on the set, because there wasn't many, we'll get a little bit into that. But one of the fun things is because you had Carl Weathers and Jesse Ventura, and Arnold and all these people, is that they all wanted to look great. And so they all worked out, like constantly were working out so they could be the biggest, and they could be, except for Carl Weathers. Carl Weathers always would work out when no one else was around, because he wanted the other guys to just think that's how he looked regular without having to pump up or anything. Obviously, they knew, but it's just that kind of that ego, that testosterone ego, like that not only was in the movie, but it was also on set between all of these guys. Like they were just competing the entire time. So
yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, Weathers looks absolutely incredible. Every bit as good, if not better, than he did in any of the Rocky films as Apollo.
Yeah, and
obviously Arnold's probably, I think he's like 210 or 220. Like down from a normal, 240. I mean, he's down at least 20 or 30 pounds for the role. Yeah. Still looks great. I love that. I don't think it's foreshadowing. It feels like it, but I just think it's part of the movie. But I love, like at the beginning, all the guys get off the chopper except for him. Mm-hmm. Like he takes his time. Like he's the last guy off with the cigar.
Of course.
And everybody else is like more in a hurry to get out. And he's just like, he just moves at his own kind of pace, which feels like foreshadowing, because since he's basically the last man standing.
Yeah.
But the cast is fantastic. I mean, Bill Duke, great. Yeah.
And which a recommendation from Arnold, because I think they had just done Commando, yeah, beforehand, and so they were still looking for some people, and Arnold was like, hire Duke, he's fantastic or whatever, and so they did, and then he comes up with that little shaving gimmick that no one knew, like that was not in the script, and he started doing it, and then they're like, well, I guess we're gonna have to come up with an idea of how to break off a Bic razor and turn it into blood and stuff like that. So wardrobe and props were like having to figure things out on the fly.
By the way, in the franchise, which is, a muddled franchise, Bill Duke as Mac is the first to wound a predator.
Mm-hmm. He is.
He just got a little too
aggressive.
Just got a little too greedy and careless, but
it's funny to me because this is not okay. So I love this movie. This is, I would say, probably the most quintessential Arnold film. Mine, I think my favorite will always go down as Terminator 2, just because that was the first one that I was able to see, because that was the one where like the killing was less, and because I was very strict from my parents.
Technically
what
zero.
From
him.
Yeah. So like it was very, very much very restrictive of what R-rated movies I could watch, and that was the first one I was able to watch. So that has a special place in my heart. Obviously, it's also time travel and a little bit more sci-fi even than this, and so like that brought me in.
Yeah.
But I didn't see Predator until high school, college era. So like had a lot of action films since then, before I watched this as well. So I think that's probably why it's not my favorite like yours, but it is. It's so enjoyable. It's so great. It is. From the dialogue is not fantastic, I can tell you that. The writing's a little bit lacking, but my goodness, it's a lot of fun. Like there's a lot of good lines, but some of it's also like, wow, that's pretty terrible.
Yeah, no, it is, but it doesn't need it.
No, it doesn't.
It's such a lean and mean piece anyway. Mm-hmm. It does have who I consider, like, for a long time, the best action film producer connection, which is Joel Silver. Mm-hmm. And he was producer on the Matrix films as well.
He was.
Like he lent a lot of credibility when they went to make the first Matrix film, and then obviously Die Hard. So it's like Blue Bloods of action filmmaking, with pairing him up again with McTiernan.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, this is kind of like an early version of the Expendables, like the original Expendables kind of a situation where you and you don't have all these action stars, but you had some big.
No, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
It's an ensemble. The big ones being Schwarzenegger, Weathers, and Ventura, and then they round everybody else out.
Yeah.
Of course, the funny thing is that you have like Shane Black on there. Really is like a filler role, because I think he was doing rewrites, if I'm not mistaken. So they bring him in, but you're right. Now, the film is aged pretty well for 87, and I think the special effects generally are pretty good for the era, especially given what they were trying to do.
Yeah.
But really why I think the movie has aged well, and I've said this numerous times on the pod, and I'm going to say it again, it's the score. Mm-hmm. It's this film score by Alan Silvestri that is as iconic as the film, and all you need to hear is that opening number, and you're like, oh yeah, this is Predator.
And for those people who don't know, Silvestri also has done movies like The Avengers, Infinity War, Endgame. Those, like, I mean, he is still going strong today and still making really high quality stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably more than a Mount Rushmore, because I could put more composers than just like 4 or 5 up there, but he'd be one that I would certainly single out. But no, I want to get into how awful this shoot was.
Oh my goodness.
Because they're actually shooting in the jungle, and it's not a great situation. All that night stuff with Schwarzenegger, he's like freezing. Mm-hmm. Gets sick. A bunch of the crew gets sick. Got dysentery. I think the only thing nobody caught was maybe malaria, but I could be wrong there. They could have got malaria too. It was awful. That
whole last kind of sequence in the water with just Predator and Arnold, it was like stagnant water. It was full of leeches. It was cold and smelly. Like, I mean, it was not a good place to shoot, and that's where they're shooting, So it's, not.
It's all Mexico.
Yeah. I mean, you've got issues of, I mean, I've done some shoots where I've had some craziness. I mean, I did a short horror film thing that we were shooting in the woods, and I come home and I'm just full of ticks and like it was not fun. But that was nothing compared to what some of the stuff they had to do. So like one of the heat visions of Predator, so they had to do a composite of a bunch of different style shots. They couldn't just use infrared or like kind of do that camera because the jungle was so hot. It was like 90 degrees and humid that it washed everything out. You couldn't see bodies because they were the same temperature as the forest and the jungle behind them. So it was absolutely useless. So they had to actually come up with some type of composite work of making, getting that heat vision to actually look well on screen.
I think they really nailed the Predator VFX, but when I watched it back recently, the opening shot of the Predator ship passing Earth, that model's pretty bad. And which doesn't make sense because this is well within the realm of, this is 8 years removed from Alien. This is the following year following Aliens. And the model works just so much better on those films than this. And it's a quick parting shot, but I noticed, I was like, it's not great. It's a really simple opening. The score's blaring and you get Arnold Schwarzenegger gets first billing, and then it's Predator in basically on black with white text, and then you're immediately into the choppers coming in, and then eventually getting into that great arm wrestle handshake and Dillon, you son of a bitch.
What does the CIA have you pushing too many pencils?
Yeah. So when we talked about Die Hard, we talked about the 80s era of the action star that is super muscled up and frankly juiced out on performance enhancing drugs. And this feels like one of the last ones, at least before because the following year you get Die Hard with a very different looking action star in Bruce Willis, more of the everyman. So this is one of the last ones. And then Arnold continues making these into the 90s, mid 90s. I consider like his last really, really good like action role for me is probably True Lies in 94 before he has to, before he has heart surgery basically. And then the studios don't want to, like, he doesn't get as good as scripts anymore after that. Once he goes in for heart surgery, they don't want to insure him for these kinds of films. So, and he does some of those more different stuff, like what End of Days, where there's action, but it's not just this, it's pretty much just all action. I mean, Predator is action wall to wall with little bits and points of dialogue in between those bits of action. And this is an era where he's still doing quite a bit of his own stunt work. I mean, he has a stuntman on it doing the bigger moves, but he's still throwing himself around. After True Lies, that basically isn't really the case anymore. And I think, was it 3 years later, he makes Total Recall, which because it's 90, which I love as well. It's really high on my list. But let's get back into discuss a little bit of this cast, because I've always been a big fan of when I look through everybody, I really like Sonny Landham as Billy. And he's so different from the rest of them. Like he sticks out like in a really, really good way. And as far as I know, that's basically him. Like, I don't know how much acting he's doing, but yeah, like he's like one of the few characters that sort of is more accepting of his fate. Like everybody else is kind of in denial, and he's just like, there's something out there, but it ain't no man. And then he just decides to go mano a mano with the machete. And that's always such a cool scene when he go ahead and slices himself on. He's on that, I think he's on that downed log, and obviously you just hear his scream. You don't actually see the fight or anything. Yeah. No, which was a really nice decision. Very Hitchcockian move of McTiernan, but he's one that, like, Jesse Ventura is fun. And I love his dialogue, and he gets the best weapon in the movie. The minigun. Yeah, which Arnold basically copies again in T2. So like it's pretty much this.
And he had to carry two of them. Yeah, one of them.
Two of them. Yeah. Yeah.
Though, so Sonny was actually part of some of the problems on set. So the studio, because the studio, to allow them to have it, basically Sonny has a short temper and is not afraid to throw hands with anybody and everybody. And so they actually had to hire a bodyguard for Sonny, not to protect Sonny, but to protect everyone else from Sonny, whose sole job is just that if Sonny got angry, he was going to get in the way and stop Sonny from trying to punch someone out or get into a fight with someone.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Just ridiculous.
Super dysfunctional shoot.
Yeah. Again, I've been on some dysfunctional shoots, but none of it was this bad, this physical, this nature really coming out and getting you. Again, I had some ticks on me, but that was really the worst. Oh.
Yeah, and you wonder how much of the angst is a direct result of how awful the shooting conditions are.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're getting sick, you're I'm assuming consuming bad water or bad produce or something, and so they're all losing a bunch of weight with that, and I can't imagine sleeping very well. Basically camped out in the jungle, and then long shoot days, and I've seen the behind the scenes stuff, and then huffing around these cameras, these 35 millimeter cameras in the jungle. And now I guess I'll have to look for it again, but I guess there are some shots where they brought in potted plants to flesh things out, and you could still see the black pots. And they just left them in the pots. It just stood them up in the jungle. I think it's towards the end of the movie, but I've never caught that, but it makes me laugh.
That's funny.
There's a lot of these movies that were miserable to make, and then the end product is incredible.
Yeah.
They can't all be great experiences, unfortunately. And this sounds just awful. So yeah, I can't blame Arnold for not working with McTiernan again.
Well, but didn't McTiernan do Last Action Hero? Didn't he direct that?
Oh no, you're right. I'm wrong on that. He did do Last Action Hero. You're right. No, he did do another. So there goes that whole theory. Yeah. No, that's correct. And that was 93.
Yes.
So 6 years later. So yeah, no, you're right. You're right. They did work together again.
But I would also say Last Action Hero is a highly underrated film. I think we've already talked on the pod about this film and why it's underrated and what people expect.
Well, we're going to have to, we're going to have to set aside an episode to discuss why it wasn't that successful and how audiences weren't ready.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think weren't ready for it, for what it was doing.
Yeah, but we'll save that for the Arnold Schwarzenegger season of movies. Yeah. Which I guess will be sans Predator, but we'll account for that somehow. Yeah.
But yeah, no, good call with Last Action Hero, because he absolutely did direct that movie. You wonder if it wouldn't have been mutually beneficial if they would have teamed up again in the late 90s or early 2000s. If it would have helped both. Arnold didn't really need it, but if it would have helped McTiernan some to get back into a groove instead of wiretapping people.
Anyways, so I will talk, I really enjoy the action in this, but I will say it does feel very 80s. It is very not down to earth, very over the top, explosions galore, gunfire that doesn't really sound like it, but it has great shots of Arnold shooting a gun and not blinking at any point. I know that's something he does really, really well. Is he just able
apparently
to
he yells really well too, because when he finishes making all his weaponry and it's late at night and he's up in the tree and he lights that torch, that yell is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's where I love the movie. It just gets super primal.
Yeah.
At that moment, you forget what era it's supposed to be set in. It doesn't matter anymore. He's relegated to bows and arrows. I guess he's got some explosive charges, but his guns are largely gone because the gun he's holding gets hit.
Mm-hmm. It does.
Which people forget. People are like, how did he survive that? It's like, well, the plasma blast or whatever from the Predator hit the gun and then ricocheted off of him. And then plus it's Arnold. He's not gonna He's not going to die.
He's plot armor. So fun fact that in an article I was reading about Predator, when I was doing a little bit of just kind of catching up with it, was that Peter Cullen did the voice of Predator. They brought him in, who was the voice of Optimus Prime and still is the voice of Optimus Prime. Oh, really? Yeah.
Does he do his laugh too?
He does do his laugh. So
I always got a kick out of his laugh.
Yeah. But so he had, apparently he had done King Kong a couple years earlier before this or something, and had almost destroyed his voice. Like at some point, like apparently he was like coughing up blood, those kind of things. And so they didn't really give him any type of like, they're just like, hey, we want you to develop the voice and the sounds that he was making. So instead of going big and bold like King Kong or whatever, he went really quiet and was just and I forget what he had heard, some animal and some soundtrack thing that did those clicks. And so that's what he did. And he was just like, he kept it really quiet because he's like, he's a hunter or those kind of things, but also to save his voice. And so that's where we got these clicks. But then it works. So like the clicking is so terrifying just in itself. Like that's all you hear because you can't see him. And it's not this big, bold, challenging thing. It's more of kind of like I'm testing the sound, or I'm getting you to move, or I'm getting, seeing, what rustles when I do this clicking.
See, these are the fortuitous things that happen when you make a movie that people think are planned. And there's so much stuff like this that comes out later that's like, nope, we didn't plan any of that.
Just a voiceover actor trying to kind of keep his voice in check and save his throat.
Yeah, I love that scene where he's like, the Predator takes off his mask and Arnold's just like, what the hell are you? and then it's like, what the hell are you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Such a great moment.
Well, and so I did find out that the Predator laugh was him mocking Ventura's character. Like, because right before it is Ventura was laughing. And so it's kind of mimicking Ventura's laughter. And so that's where the laughter came from.
That end laugh of when he's armed that detonation device, that's a really different laugh. Like that always like, I always got a kick out of that because it was like on the surface, it shouldn't work. It's a superhuman, diabolical sounding laugh. Mm-hmm. It's like, that doesn't sound like an alien, but it's like, well, what if it's just a recording? Like, like everything, like so much of the other mimicry stuff that he plays back, stick around and which you're right. That's like one of the good one-liners is like
there's so many. This is where Get to the Chopper comes from. I mean,
it's Choppa.
Choppa, yeah. But like a more apropos Arnold quote, there is none.
The only thing he doesn't say in this is I'll be back.
Yeah. And so apparently Predator was actually supposed to be played by Van Damme originally.
Yes. Yeah. And the costume's trash.
Yeah, absolute trash. Well, I mean,
the costume he was in was just absolute garbage. The first time I saw that behind the scenes photo of him sitting with somebody, I was like, that looks photoshopped.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was around, hired and fired. I don't think it was very long. I don't know how long they shot with him, but they went
work
through a creature redesign, and which is crazy to me that they're like already shooting, and then they had to do. And was it Stan Winston
who did this? Yeah, did the creation of the yeah, it was Stan Winston. Yeah.
And so it's what kind of schedule did he whip that up under?
Well, he did it really fast. And one of the things I'd seen kind of a behind the scenes thing, and he was talking about it where one of his friends was just like, you would never get to put mandibles on a creature. Like they never want that. And so he was just like, well, I got no direction. I'm going to put mandibles on the creature. And sure enough, and now it's the iconic look.
It is. Yeah, it is. That thing.
That face, the Predator face is so iconic. Like, I mean, you can just the moment you see kind of that profile with the mandibles, you're like, well, all right, that's the Predator. Done.
Yeah, and I understand the Alien movies, like they're better, like it's a better grouping of movies, but I'm Team Predator all the way.
Oh, of course.
And so when I saw and AVP was such a disappointment. I mean, it's just such a, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, we won't talk about that.
We will not.
I'll go into briefly on Predator 2. Predator 2 does a lot of things right Predators 2's probably biggest problem, because I've watched it fairly recently.
Mhm.
Its biggest issue is Danny Glover. It just is. Like, he's just not. Danny Glover's a fine actor, but he's just not what that movie needed in the lead.
Yeah.
If you put a bigger actor in the lead of that movie and everything else pretty much stays the same, I'm telling you, it's not better than this one, but you've got a much, much better sequel. Because I watched it super recent and was like, this is a lot better than I remember. The whole concept of them taking it from the jungle to
the streets,
the concrete jungle, was the right move. But yeah, that movie's got other issues too.
It does. This is just such a fun movie. This is such a classic Arnold. Like, it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't get better than the 1987 Predator action film for this film. I really enjoy it. I think, I was talking with a couple friends of mine and just kind of mentioned, like, Predator is still kind of one of the better or best monster movies that are still out there. That kind of like fighting your dragons kind of, that while there's a lot of mystery in the alien, it's definitely that goes more towards horror film style, kind of finding where this is just a duke 'em out, almost kind of like a King Kong versus Godzilla type of fight. It's Arnold versus Predator, and you just don't really get that kind of.
Yeah, no, it's a really good observation. Absolutely. Nobody's really making anything like this right now. I think you're right. The Expendables angle is spot on. Like, this is the early iteration of the big macho testosterone fueled ensemble piece, basically, where these guys get picked off pretty much one by one. Yeah. And I have to admit, I've still not seen Prey.
Oh, neither have I.
And I need to, because I've heard good things. I'll put it on my list, but this is my favorite Arnold. It's not like I put it head and shoulders above T2 or Total Recall.
No.
But I think the military special forces angle on it is I have kind of an affection for that. And it's movies like this that when The Rock was trying to do, when he was coming on the scene, I thought we were going to get stuff harkening back to this, and he never ended up making a movie like this.
I was with The Rundown. I liked The Rundown a lot. The one with Sean William Scott in it. I was so excited to see where The Rock was going. And some say that his deal with Disney was calculated, because he was like, if I continue to do these action films right now, I'm going to basically be going still up against Arnold and people's, envisioning Arnold. Cause it was like, I think it was like 2003 or 2004 was The Rundown. So you're talking like Arnold was still pretty much doing films or had just done some films, but doing this Disney run of Disney movies, The Rock is introducing himself to a whole new generation of film, moviegoers. And so when they become teenagers and adults, that's when he makes this switch over into this kind of more action star thing, when then they can, and so they don't really have, they can go back and watch Arnold, but Arnold wasn't as, he wasn't the day-to-day name that he was back even in the 2000s. And so he didn't have to, this is a theory. This is not, of maybe it was a calculated reason why he did that Disney deal, so he could kind of get into the hearts and minds of the young people. So when he did switch over to action, they'd be willing to follow.
Yeah, I know when he was making his kind of run up through the ranks that it looked like a natural handoff from Schwarzenegger, and it just never really happened.
No. Because he did Walking Tall? Was that the other one?
I think that was even before The Rundown. I think that was maybe even before.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
He had a few films that felt like early. Walking Tall was a remake, but it felt like an early Arnold film did. Kind of bare bones, really, really simple plot. Because Arnold made some stinkers too. Just watch Raw Deal. Terrible movie. Terrible movie.
It's not what I thought you were going to say, but it's fantastic.
The shootout near the end is great, but and it has one of my favorite Arnold scenes in a movie where where he's arguing with his wife and she throws a cake at him and he like barely dodges it and it smashes into the cabinets behind him and he tells her, you should not drink and bake. But that's really all part. Raw Deal has good for. And I have the poster for Raw Deal too for my father, and it's an amazing movie poster. But yeah, Raw Deal was trash. So it's like I was waiting for Arnold to hand the torch off, the baton, to somebody, and it never really happened. And maybe it didn't happen because Hollywood went a different direction with this and with their leading action stars.
Yeah.
With the smaller, not smaller, just average looking people instead of 6'2" and Mr. Olympia.
Yeah.
Because even the action figures all mimicked this stuff. I mean, that's why He-Man became popular. And yeah.
Because that's what it was. But then you get in the 90s and you get a lot of, normal looking guys. I mean, heck, Nick Cage was an action star. He was like the biggest action star in the 90s,
Yeah. I love that meme of Nick Cage through the years, and in the middle is Travolta.
Because of Face Off.
From Face Off, yeah.
The best.
Yeah. Sorry, everybody. Sometimes it's Tangentville on the pod.
It happens.
I shouldn't make any apologies for it, but yeah, this is right. I think Predator's the last of a kind of a dying genre.
Yeah. Because Total Recall had a lot of action in it as well, but it definitely was much more about kind of the story than and Predator has some story, but it's really like we're just going to move this along until we get to Arnold and the Predator, and that's the penultimate kind of climax of them fighting. Whereas Total Recall has a lot going on with it of like,
well, and you can kind of gauge these how like peak action they are by how much screen time does Arnold have his shirt off.
Yeah. By the way, speaking of that, I love the fact like he goes through the battle, like he gets off, he's wearing the red shirt that's short sleeves, but then he puts on his gear. But then they're going to traipse through the jungle, and as they've gone through the firefight, he just keeps slowly taking off more and more clothing until it's just the vest. And I'm just like, you're going to go through the woods with like nothing
for the female viewer.
Yeah.
And frankly, the male viewer.
Yeah.
The whole joke, by the way, if you lift weights a lot, you end up looking anything like Arnold. You think that women are going to come flocking to you and be like, oh, but what happens is guys come up to you, straight guys, and are like, man, how much you bench, bro? Like, that was always the joke about being muscle bound is like, it doesn't you don't get the women, you get it's other dudes. They're just like, dude, you're jacked. But yeah, he this and Commando was kind of peak. Commando. I think you're right. It's kind of peak, like shirtless Schwarzenegger.
Yeah. Well, Predator. Thoughts. Last thoughts. Anything?
Thoughts, feelings, emotions.
Wish we had said.
The conversation can't go that deep because this is not a deep film. This is not a deep, thought-provoking film. This is raw, visceral entertainment.
But there's a place for that. Like not everything can be that heavy.
No,
sometimes you need this, and this is just as much art as an entertainment as some of the others.
This is true escapist.
Yeah,
flair. Yeah, it is. I get a special forces, and then I get a survivalist film for the price of one.
Yep,
it's fantastic.
Well, with that, I think we're going to say thank you, everybody, for watching us. We release these every Monday, so please join us either on our YouTube channel or you can get them wherever you get your podcasts. So thanks for joining us and have a great rest of your day.